jump in, so we can
Oh, hell
just
yeah, that's my favorite, yeah.
yeah, we just kind of get going and start talking about stuff.
Oh, good. All
Yeah.
right.
So kind of what we've been doing.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
You got
But
me off guard.
no, you're all good. It's actually perfect. But let's touch on what kind of what we were talking about. You
Okay.
you played in a league in Chicago?
Yeah, yeah, so, it's kind of funny because I decided to stay there. I used to go back and forth home after, like, over the summer and, because I still live here in near Santa Cruz in California, and would always debate on like going home or do I stay here? And then a lot of my friends would stay because then we'd always have to come back early anyway for football camp. And so I decided to stay one of those years over the summer and got myself involved in a softball league, and then like a dodgeball league kind of popped up on top of that. And I was like, dodgeball, that's crazy. I love dodgeball. Like, like I was saying, like it was illegal for a while. Like it's this, it's one of those things that just brings you right back to your childhood of like, I had so many fun memories of it, of just throwing balls at people's faces and, watching their face grimace. And yeah, you get this like sick kind of pleasure out of it. But yeah, it was all those things and more. You get guys that were playing out there that could basically, they could do these like these throws where it would curve and
Hmm.
it would kind of slice and hit you from the side, and like there's all these like
Yeah.
weird ways that you could throw the ball to kind of make it even more challenging. So yeah,
What kind of
I had a blast.
what kind of balls were you guys playing with? Were you playing with foam or like kickballs?
Yeah, so they were the foam ones, not the rubber bouncy hard ones. Like
Yeah.
I've played with those too, which those are more fun because it's extra satisfying when it smashes somebody's face. That
Yes.
noise, jonk.
It-
But yeah, the foam ones were cool because you could kind of grip them, and you could put spin on them, and I could throw it like overhand, like I'm chopping it down, and
mhm.
but yeah, like it was like different techniques with those type of balls for sure.
Well, that's what we usually play with in college. Is we play with those kickballs, and the way that we throw is we actually like pinch down on the ball so that we can throw almost a knuckleball,
Uh-huh.
and so it puts a lot more spin on it. You can drop, and the velocity on it just picks up so much more.
Yeah.
So the game hasn't really graduated too much from the playground. When you get a nice face shot, you hear a crowd go ooh. So
Yeah, it's not like frowned upon at all. No, it's like fair game, right? You signed up for it.
exactly. There has been a little bit of a debate, like in a couple of Facebook groups, on whether it should be celebrated or not. But a lot of times that's shot down because bottom line, it's what people want to see.
Yeah.
It's what you come out to the gym for, and
Oh yeah.
it gets everybody
You don't
excited.
watch NASCAR for, just racing in circles. You watch it for the car crashes.
Yeah, exactly.
You do.
Yeah,
So,
so we before we really get into everything, I want to answer any questions you have about dodgeball. So that way, when we kind of get into more fitness stuff, you have a little
okay.
bit more bearings
Yeah,
to
kind of more of
answer.
the demographics and, like I,
Yeah.
I do want to know like who's playing right now. Like, what does that look like? Is it still like a male dominated sort of activities, or females? Is there like all kinds of different like heights and sizes of people? Like, what are we looking at here?
Yeah. So it is more male, but our women's league is actually growing year over year. So I think last year we had probably 18 women's teams at nationals, but we also play a co-ed game as well. So a blended team. Um, but you get a wide range of people. You get
Mhm.
ex-college athletes, and then you get somebody that might look like he just crawled out of his mom's basement. Like it's a wide range of people.
Got the Cheeto dust like all over his shirt. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what's most surprising is people that don't look like athletes. If you sleep on them a little bit, you're gonna get taken to school. Like it sometimes is embarrassing.
Yeah. So you've been surprised a few times with some guys that may not look super athletic, throwing zingers out there, or what?
Oh yeah, they either throw in or they catch everything. They found their niche in the team,
Oh,
and They just stick to it.
Okay, describe that. So you got role players, obviously, because it's
Yeah.
a sport at the end of the day, and then people figure out how to get more competitive with it. What does that arrangement look like? Like if you have a team and you see like a guy's really good at catching, another guy's like, sort of your frontline guy. Like how do you describe all these different types of positions?
So the way it works is so we play 6 on 6. And a lot of times, you have a back and forth, kind of like, I guess basketball would be the best thing I can equate it to, where you go down one side of the court and then you come back and play defense.
Uh huh.
You usually have your big throwers on the two corners.
Mm.
And the reason you put them there is because you can put people around them to protect them. So if they have a ball, they can block because you don't want them to get out.
Ah,
Then you have your best catchers usually more towards the middle. So that way they're drawing balls and more likely to get catches instead of just wasting a throw at a blocker.
okay.
So, and that's all in a perfect scenario
Mhm,
where you might be moving up and down the court and have to transition quickly, or you might lose a thrower mid transition and you
mhm.
kind of have to shuffle on the fly to get back into a nice defensive set.
Okay, so that's right. So you have to have a ball in your possession to be able to block it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if it does hit your hand as you're trying to block it, are you out or
So technically your hand is part of the ball,
uh-huh.
but if you say block it into your own foot or you block it into a teammate,
Mhm.
if you block it into your own foot, you're out. Or if you block it into a teammate, that teammate's out.
Mm.
But it
But they
works.
catch it before it hits the ground and then they would be safe.
Yep. And then the person that threw it is
The
out.
person that threw it out, even if it was deflected.
Yep. Even if it was deflected. So even if it hits, say it hits me, you're standing next to me and you catch it, we're both safe and that person's out.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever played that game on Nintendo NES, Dodgeball? It was like an international dodgeball video game.
I have not. I have
Dude,
not played that. I'll have to
what?
look into that.
Okay, so you get like these super throws, right? So the way it's all structured, they have like three guys on the other side of the court that are around the perimeter of it. So
Mhm.
you could actually like pass it to them to then try and throw in against, kind of get them off guard from behind them or from the sides. And then if you do like a running throw, it like turns into a football, it turns into a split, a bunch of different balls. It turns into like this squirrely screwball. It's a badass game, man. I grew up playing that all the time.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
They actually that sounds like a style of play they play overseas. They use it as like a training exercise.
Uh,
It's like in school, it was we called it jailbreak dodgeball, except over there, if you throw to the jail can then throw it back at a player instead of going back to the other side.
Yeah, I like that too because if you get out, you could kind of go on to the side. You still interact, but
Yeah,
you're just now, on the other side of the equation there.
yeah. So, what else do you want to know before we get into fitness stuff?
Well, I mean, so obviously you got a podcast just devoted to this sport. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
the, the premise, and you're speaking to this community. Like, what does this community look like? Like, do you guys have rituals? Do you like so? Here's an example. So obviously we saw what happened with CrossFit, how
Mhm.
crazy that religious that cult became. And then we actually had an event here that we hosted that was a kettlebell competition. And there's competitive kettlebell competitions that have their own like really tight knit groups of people that all sort of wear the same type of clothes, like they have the same type of sponsors,
Yeah.
they're all eating the same stuff, so is dodgeball like that in any way?
I mean, I guess because it is um, the way that the league is set up. It is your team is your team for the year,
Mhm.
and you're not going to different regions and playing with different teams. You're traveling with your team, so yes, you do get a lot of people, especially at nationals. You get the North teams usually kind of hang out together because they're all pretty close and they've hung out, probably 4 or 5 times that year. And
Mhm.
that's not even including charity tournaments that people just decide to drive and play. But you will get, the North clique, the East clique, the South clique, and the West Coast
Oh,
clique.
snap.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And, all making faces at each other in the cafeteria and stuff while you're eating. But
So I'm gonna go ahead and predict that one of these teams wears grass skirts. No?
not, not
I've
yet.
always seen that. Yeah. So I didn't even tell you. So our team was Team Ballstein. You ever seen Zoolander?
Yeah.
Okay, so we were like, Ballstein's models. Like, so
Yeah.
we had this ridiculous uniform, and we had these we almost made helmets that almost look like oven mitts, but we wore them over our head. So anyway, it was like fun because everybody had these ridiculous costumes and everything. But I'm sure you guys take it a little more seriously in terms of like uniforms and whatnot.
Yeah, especially now that like that we're like legit. Now there's kind of a little bit more frowned upon when you have, because we used to be the mountain men, and I had a like all plaid jersey with a big
Yeah,
old lumberjack with a pint of beer on it, and
nice.
it was okay for that last year, but then we had to go ahead and get rid of that just because it had beer on the jersey. But
Yeah, I gotta get a new mascot, huh?
yeah, but that team dissolved and found a new one anyway, so
Mm,
all worked out.
right
But
on.
we're kind of like almost like rugby in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
we all hate each other on the court while we're playing, but then afterwards everybody goes out to the bars, drinks beer together, and are best
Yeah.
buds.
Oh yeah, that's great. I remember actually I played rugby too. That was a weird thing though, because we would get teams that would travel, from even around the world, like from Australia, New Zealand, and England and whatnot, and they would come stay, with us and would also like party with us before we even played. And I just like I'm such a competitive person that was hard for me. I couldn't like befriend you and bring you in and then smash you. Like I
Yeah.
want to like I don't know. I used to have to pull from this place of anger before I'd go out and smash people, whether it's football or rugby. But I got used to it. But that was totally one of those things. I was like, this is weird. Like, I don't. Why are we partying? Like, you're supposed to be my enemy.
Yeah, that was one of the transitions I had to make too from college into this league. Is in college I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't talk to any of the other teams. I didn't know who anybody was.
Mhm.
I had to know a couple of people because I was one of the captains, and so I had to, shake hands and have that conversation. But after graduating, getting into this league, it's a lot more social outside of the game.
Mhm.
Instead of traveling, 6 8 hours just to play and leave, there's a lot more of a sense of community
Mm,
because I mean we're not getting paid to play dodgeball.
yeah.
We're paying to show up to play dodgeball, so we might as well make it a fun ass weekend if we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Team Globo Gym, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool, man. Like I dig it. If there was one here and I carve out some time, I'd be all about it. I've been looking for something competitive to do again. So that's
Yeah.
cool that it kind of took off like that.
Yeah, and actually, the West Coast is one of our biggest regions, and I know it's a lot more towards like LA and stuff, but we've gotten a couple. Actually, our two newest schools are Oregon and Oregon State. We do have a lot of presence in Portland, up in Seattle, so I know it's still a ways from you, but we're trying. We're all around you right now.
Nice. All
Yeah.
right. Well, who knows? Yeah, make your way to Santa Cruz. I may be in on you guys.
Hey, start a team. We'll find a way to get you there.
Okay. All right.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I know, the fitness aspects of it and playing football and focusing on that performance aspect of sport. We have such unorthodox movements
Hmm.
in dodgeball that you never really know where you're going to end up, whether you're after dodging, even after a throw. I'm trying to express this to our community that, just lifting like a bodybuilder is not going to cut it. That
No.
multiple planes are where people need to be training. And actually the what episode was it? It's like 1430 or something. You went in on um rotational strength. And that was something I've really tried to preach. Um can you kind of break down how that would be more relevant for anti-rotational for someone that's trying to throw and then dodge right after.
Okay. So you're talking about a bunch of different things, which I totally agree with. You have to approach this with a completely different mindset when you're training
Mhm.
for these types of things. I mean, you're doing a lot of explosive movements. You're abruptly stopping. I mean, there's a lot of shuffling left to right. Pretty much anything is fair game in terms of like your joints having the functional ability. I preach to rotation a lot because that's what we neglect the most on a daily basis.
Mhm.
And so to learn how to properly stabilize it and sort of anchor your body and get that anti-rotational effect is a very valuable place to start. And you could do that through various moves of just learning how to do that from being in a plank position and just noticing how your hips tend to kind of sway one way or the other when you are doing a single leg toe touch, watching your foot and how it ends up rotating on its own and being able to stabilize. It's all this, what you're talking about is having control over your body. And sports, it's kind of a hard place to really articulate to a beginner how complex and nuanced sports are, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just so many different movement abilities to consider. And dodgeball is one of those, like I'm my brain's spinning already, uh just trying to like narrow it down to like a few moves. There's a ton of different movements. So it in terms of like just doing like a regular type of a workout, you want to build a base. You want to build a base of strength and support and stability. So you want to be able to have joint stability and do sort of a self check, a self analysis that's very simple, that just kind of shows you, hey, this is how my joints are supposed to move. This is how I can keep myself. Um, I can keep myself solid and immovable in this position. I can maintain these types of poses for a long enough time, and my body's not going to fatigue and then resort back to these unfavorable postural positions. So, in terms of not trying to get too lost in the weeds, what I like to do is refer people to our different webinars that we've put out, because
Mhm.
um, we really try to take our time to simplify how to check all these different joints and make sure that they're able to do what they're supposed to do. And so there's just a few different movements. We tried to narrow it down. There's three in the one that I did, where we just use a wall, we use a squat, and we use a windmill as exercises. So the wall is really, it's great because it provides that rigid feedback. So
Mhm.
I can lean against it, and then you're going to really see what your body does to compensate, to be able to try and kind of press itself into the wall. A lot of times people are very surprised at how far their head sticks forward, and these are all things that come as a result of your daily patterns. So if I'm looking at my phone all the time, I'm on the computer all day,
Mhm.
I'm working at a desk, like everything is so in front of us that inevitably your body's going to compensate and sort of form into these positions. So the first place that I usually take them is to the wall to see if they can get these different points of contact to touch the wall all at the same time, which is sounds pretty basic, but it's very
Right.
difficult when you've allowed your body to sort of go through these types of movements all day and try and get more efficient at it. Your body's job is to make whatever you do more efficient, and so to be able to retrain it to be an optimal posture is everything. That's the first place you have to start. So I take Doug in this webinar through a wall press, and so he has his arms against the wall. He tries to get the back of his head touching the wall. He tries to then draw in his stomach so his lower back is touching the wall,
Mhm.
and then keeping his feet even against the wall. So there's, as you can see, like to just get flat completely against the wall is very difficult. and you have to be able to gain access to your core and to be able to, brace. And so it's teaching a lot of those techniques that will then apply towards keeping you anchored when you're doing all these crazy movements. Like, how can I bring myself back to this optimal, like, posture alignment, this homeostasis? How can I find my way back to a solid position? Because if you're moving around all the time and you don't have full control over your body, you're not going to be as good of an athlete. And your joints are going to suffer as a result. So we go through that, then we go through the windmill, because um, that really highlights rotation ability, especially in your spine and in your thoracic spine.
Hmm.
So up in your upper back, again, most common things are that people's shoulders are forward a lot because of what I said earlier, and their head protrudes forward a lot, and they're sitting down quite a bit, and so they kind of lose core strength.
Hmm.
Uh, and so it's just a way to kind of show that you should be able to do exactly what I did and what Doug is trying to perform in this, without any pain or restriction.
Hmm.
And if you can't, then that's an area you really need to improve. And just like that, we do that with the squat too, where we have a stick that goes along their spine, and it's just another way to kind of provide feedback. If they can hold their body together in this pose while they go through movement. And that's as simple as we can get in terms of, building upon that to create a more optimal functional body to get explosive with it, which is that's the pinnacle of your training is explosive movements. And I
Right.
think that a lot of weekend warriors forget that. And this is where we see a lot of, injuries as a result of that. So,
Yeah. That's what I said in our last episode that, a lot of those, because I mean, a lot of dodgeballers, they do have full time jobs where they're at a desk or they are, like you said, in front of them all day, where they do have those rounded shoulders. So I have Prime. So I've tried to explain this over a podcast, and this is only our second time doing it over Zoom, so that they can actually see me now. So
okay.
it makes it this makes more sense when we're talking about it and can see each other. So everybody that's listening, that's heard me try to explain this before, hopefully that clears everything up.
Well, hopefully, I know it's still kind of like I get a little bit lost in the weeds sometimes trying to explain, because it is a very much of a visual thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like I'm trying to kind of paint a picture with people struggling just to kind of press their body into the wall like they should.
Hmm.
Hard to describe, but feeling your way through that is everything. And that's why I pretty much direct people now to these free webinars, because we've had a lot of great feedback from that, and it's something that, like, sort of it gives people a perspective of, oh, I didn't realize I did that. I didn't realize my
Hmm.
shoulders were that far forward. I didn't realize, like, I couldn't stick my head all the way back without my ribs flaring way up. And then
Right.
and you just notice how your body alters and compensates based on what you're tasking it to do. And it's good education. It's good to know your body at a level like that. So that way, if you are training, you can get way more specific to what you have going on personally.
Yeah. And like I said, we have a wide range of athletic abilities. There's people that even are on my team that I ask them what they're feeling when they throw, and they have no idea.
Hmm.
They so I don't know. I just go out and throw. So it's
Hmm.
okay. Well, your back hurts now, so we kind of have to break this down and figure out what's going on with that.
Hmm.
Uh, but
Yeah, go ahead.
with the forward shoulder that you were talking about, being that we are an overhead throwing sport,
Hmm.
shoulder mobility is something we've also been pressing a lot of. And one, correcting it, and two, how expanding on that. And I know you're a big proponent of mace work and all that kind of stuff. How could somebody kind of implement that into helping with their shoulder mobility and helping their throwing?
Well, first thing is alignment. So you want to be able to get your shoulder to track properly. And so when you have a forward shoulder, if when you have your shoulder forward, a lot of times that's going to create unnecessary friction there in the ball and socket joint. And so when we go into optimal alignment, it allows more of that free rotation to occur.
Hmm.
And so that's why I stress that the most in the beginning, is to be able to pull yourself back into the optimal position for the joint to function at its highest ability. So the shoulder is a clear example that it has a lot of different ranges of motion that it's capable of, but a lot of times, like, we don't consider that our starting point isn't even ideal.
Hmm.
So to be able to start kind of correcting that and going through the corrective process, you need to identify, how extreme that is. And so there's another one that I go through, which is like a shoulder circle on the wall. And you could see too, based off of like not just like rotating the arm up, but also now supinating
Hmm.
and pronating, the entire hand and the elbows and the wrists and everything to coordinate that. It That's all connected to a throw specifically. So to get your shoulder joint in optimal mobility, you have to stretch and make sure that you have like that full range of motion. And so a wall circle is a great exercise for that. And what I've gone through and have found out personally through a lot of different certifications and education out there, through techniques like through FRC, which is functional range conditioning, like adding an isometric component to your stretches. So being able to really squeeze and add tension throughout your muscles provides a bit of feedback to the body that there's security there. It's supported, and so you can actually kind of increase your range of motion almost immediately by squeezing the muscles and providing stability as feedback. So the stretching has changed dramatically over the years. So it's like,
Yeah.
again, this is another one of those where I could get really like technical and nerdy about like why
Hmm.
I prefer things like kin stretch or those types of techniques. But that's in the webinar itself too. But to be able to get your shoulder and your everything to track properly is crucial. And then you work your way down the kinetic chain. So I want to make sure that I'm being able to brace and have that anti-rotational stability in the hips, but also be able to drive force and power through my legs, which then you pull from that power that you generate through ground forces,
Hmm.
and then you allow that freedom for your arm to then come over the top and have free travel with that. So I mean, there's a lot to it. It's connecting the entire body, right? So being able to have like muscle tension and be able to generate power from the lower limbs into the core, but then allow for
Hmm.
this like freedom of travel in your shoulder. That's all connected to a throw, and putting it all together takes a lot of practice in treating that like a skill of itself. So it's something that I would do with minimal intensity, very frequently.
Yeah, that's something that we like to preach is having that core strength, because if you have, all legs and shoulders, there's nothing to tie that power from your legs up through your shoulder and then through the ball. So we like to preach that a lot as well. I'm glad you touched on that. That cements everything, that we're not just full of shit here talking about
Yeah,
dodgeball.
yeah. I don't want to throw you under the bus or anything, so that's good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other weird thing about dodgeball is, unlike a baseball pitcher, that arm slot's very constant or consistent, and it doesn't change too much.
Mhm.
Where we have several different throws that we can do, or you never know where you're going to be throwing from. I mean, you might have someone throwing a submarine ball. You might
Mhm.
guys throw behind their back, and you might have it to dodge a ball halfway through your throw, so your arm ends up way out here instead of over the top where it should be.
Mhm,
Um, and we get a lot of guys that don't play dodgeball like throughout the year. They
mm,
come out to their tournament one weekend a month and just throw it out, game three, and then just pop an ibuprofen, just keep grinding that
mm,
joint down. And it's something that, we see as a problem. So that's why we kind of actually started
mhm.
as the podcast, because we love dodgeball. We want to see it grow. I mean, put 10 years into the sport already, and I would love to see an Olympic dodgeball team one day. I know I
Yeah.
probably won't be able to play, but hopefully by that point, I'm too old and there's way better people playing. But that was kind of why we started, because we
Mm,
saw that need.
mhm. Yeah, no, and thinking about longevity too in any sport, it should be a consideration from all coaches, especially. And this is where I try to voice that. Like we get a lot of questions, on the podcast too about sports related types of training, and the coaches and strength coaches I always look up to are the ones that are like world renowned at keeping all the super athletes healthy, like a Mike Boyle or Joe DeFranco, or
Hmm.
any of them in the strength world, in the athletic world, where they have a track record where they're handling these hockey teams and football teams and the players, but they're allowing them, because they're already at like a really high level of performance, but being able to then train to reinforce joint stability and longevity and all these explosive movements is everything, because that type of demand on the joints is really wearing on the body.
Hmm.
And that's something that I think it's not cool and sexy to talk about, especially because it's the fun stuff is just picking the ball up and throwing it as hard as you can and getting
Right.
that satisfaction of smacking somebody with it. But then if this is going to be a thing, you really got to consider the longevity of your joints and being able to replicate that each time you go out there to compete. So, the training for it, I would put a lot heavier emphasis on mobility practices and ritualizing a lot of these types of movements where you can create that type of muscle tension and support and stability around the joint on a whim,
Hmm.
and that's something that you need to train to be able to have that ability.
Yeah, and that's something that I don't think our generation of dodgeballers really got. And then I hope that people coming up, like people that are just coming out of college, 19, 18 years old, will start to actually consider, because
Mhm,
we got guys that are, mid 30s, late 20s, that have been playing, and it's been the same thing where it's just I go out on a weekend. Yeah, I can't raise my right arm the day after,
mhm.
but I had a hell of a good time. I threw really hard and hit a couple of kids really hard, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But
Drink some beers to wash away the pain, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I mean, we have flag football leagues. I'm always like concerned about those things because, like, I mean, I'm 40 years old now, and my body, it like I feel like I'm the same guy. I feel like I have
Yeah.
all those same abilities, and then nothing's gonna change. And then I wake up the next morning, I'm like, oh, I could barely like move, just to tie my shoe, and it's just you just have to be smart. You have to be smarter, and you have to approach uh your time, and your play has to be centered around like more mobility practices and things that are going to help benefit you, so you can still enjoy what you're doing. But I mean, unfortunately, we have to consider all these things now. it's
Hmm.
it's it's a fact, like your body just there's sort of a shelf life in terms of how much like demand and stress you can just place on yourself without then reaping the consequences.
Right. And if you had to go back, or if you could go back to when you were playing football in college, would that be something you would really want to stress to yourself? Is just really focus on this. It might not be sexy, like you said, but
Right.
necessary.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, I was the PR guy, you know, like all I cared about was like I want to be the strong guy in the gym and I want to hit the hardest on the field. Like that's all I cared about. And
Right.
so I just would put myself through hell in practice and then also in the off season and just put as much demand on my body as possible. And it I felt impenetrable. Like I felt like bulletproof for the longest time until about my junior year of college football, and then I tore my MCL, and that was the first time I ever even had an injury other than concussions. Which, of course, my dumbass thought a concussion wasn't a real injury. That was just like a minor headache setback.
Right.
Uh, so that's another thing that I've been working through is these concussions that are now affecting the way that I remember information and whatnot. But yeah, dude, like it's I would totally consider um my training with a completely different perspective to because not only does it extend the longevity of doing these explosive movements and doing them in a way that's more effective. Like it's actually a performance enhancement, and so this is another aspect of mobility training that I think athletes just don't really consider.
Hmm.
Um, for me to be able to reorganize my body a lot quicker and have be more stable on the field, I can cut harder, I can stop quicker. I can generate more force. So here's the thing: when your joints are accounted for and so you don't have any like loose travel, you can stay tight. You're sending that signal to your brain that okay, oh, here we can now turn up the amount of force production because we've accounted for all these joints and everything is safe, and so now we can kind of crank up the dial a bit, and
Hmm.
so you can actually generate more force because your joints are stable. So I noticed this when I went to bench press, and I always would get to a certain limit, and then my shoulder would sort of start talking to me and it would get painful and I would lose stability in my shoulder. And it wasn't until I really put in the work and did all those rotational movements and things that I preach all the time with mace bells and Indian clubs and, really started to address that to where my shoulders felt like a lot more supported. I went
Hmm.
back and started training bench to get, somewhat close to where I used to be, and I surpassed it. And so I reached new levels of strength because, I was able to provide more of that security and support around where I had a weakness in my abilities.
Yeah, and that's what they say about boxers is that it's not force generated; it's being able to catch the punch on the back end. That person can always punch way harder, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and punching through people instead
Right.
of snapping right on them. Yeah.
um, so another big question we get is people are always curious about their diet. They don't know what they should be eating game day. They're not sure what they should be eating throughout the week to recover. And I know we've touched on it a bunch, but I want to get your thoughts because I listen to both with Max and with Dr. Paul Saladino. Is
Uh-huh.
I want to see where you're at with carnivore now.
Oh, with carnivore? Honestly, I look at carnivore specifically. I'll talk about that first, just because I have experimented with it quite a
Hmm.
bit. And the reason that I even was curious was because of the basically like an elimination diet. So
Hmm.
I looked at it as one of the most simple ways to reduce what I was consuming to then identify any potential problematic foods that I was eating.
Okay.
So to kind of lay off for a while of what I was normally consuming all the time without putting any thought behind it, um, I was able to kind of identify that I was having a lot of issues with grains. I was having a lot of issues with flour and anything basically gluten related. And so that was very enlightening for me and revealed quite a bit. So I mean, I had violent heartburn. I've had this for like for so long. I just thought it was like a gift that my parents gave me as a genetic gift, right?
Yeah.
And like I couldn't really do much about it but medicate. And so I'm taking Prilosec, I'm taking Tums. Like it's just like
Ugh.
a constant part of my lifestyle that I would just eat, and I'm just like, well, I got to do this, otherwise I pay for it at like 3 in the morning. Um, and so I was finally like, you know what, that shouldn't be the way I live. I just had this epiphany. I'm like, talking to these guys on the podcast all the time, and I'm eating, what I thought was pretty much whole food based and like healthy, but I was still having like, gastrointestinal problems and, acid reflux, and just my overall energy was shit. So,
Mhm.
for me, it was enlightening because, two, when you reduce it down to just meat, and it obviously, if you want to do this like correctly, you're going to introduce organ meat and
Mhm.
meats with a little bit more nutrients attached to that. So I did little bits of that. I tried to sneak it in like burger patties and things. So I did, because I'm not a huge fan of organ meat, but I knew it was important. So I did stick pretty much with red meats because there was more nutrients I would get from that.
Right.
And it was very bioavailable. It was something that, like, so the animals already consumed most of the nutrients and processed it all for me, and now I'm just eating the meat as a
Mhm.
result and benefiting from that. So I didn't have any acid reflux. I was sleeping better. Like all these like amazing things were happening, but it was so restrictive in the way that my lifestyle. I'm like, I can't. I don't. I not only do I don't want to do this for very long. Let's just put it that. I don't want to just eat meat only.
Right.
Like to me, that's just unrealistic. And so I've learned to kind of go intermittently, bring that in when I feel like I need to almost have a bit of a reset. And I can sort of get my gastrointestinal issues to kind of calm down a bit.
Mhm.
So anybody that has any kind of autoimmune or any underlying uh, gastrointestinal type issues or anything like that, I think carnivore diet might be something to consider. Just like an elimination diet, if you went to go see a functional medicine practitioner, they'd kind of take you through that and
Mhm.
see when they do a reintroduction of carbohydrates, when dairy, and so which ones might be an offender in your diet. Like that's good information to know. And so I kind of lean a little bit more, and that's more wellness. And
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people on your podcast are probably like interested more in like performance, like what's going to give you that edge out there on the field. Um, Honestly, I think being the healthiest person possible gives you a massive advantage for one. So I again, this is where my message sort of changes, because before I would probably say, well, you should try, maybe restricting the amount of carbs you're eating, do a little bit of carb loading. So maybe
Mhm.
introduce it, beforehand, earlier in the morning. And, but that only works if you deplete yourself from carbs and then introduce it. And then you get this nice energy rush that you can utilize and shuttle throughout your event that you're competing at. But honestly, my best answer is get yourself healthy, and that looks totally different for everybody out there. Like it's on a completely individual basis. But if I have to put like some general sort of standards out there, it's going to be leaning a little bit more towards whole food options.
Mhm.
So foods that aren't necessarily boxed up or have like long shelf lives, and are very much like simple carbohydrates, things like that. That you it during competition. Maybe if you have a really long competition, I would consider maybe
Yeah.
simple carbohydrates as something to consider, like for those like explosive energy bouts, or like if you're depleted in competition.
Mhm.
But honestly, if you're eating healthy continuously, you're going to already have energy. And I doubt, how long are the games?
So, we actually play multiple games. We could play a tournament. It could be 12 hours in a gym. So we play the two styles. So we'll play an open where we're playing open hand where we can't pinch the ball. Then we'll play our full on pinch. And sometimes we'll have different branches playing at the same time. So maybe we'll have a foam tournament playing at the same time. So if you're playing in both of these play styles, you get to the gym at 8:30 in the morning, you warm up, you start playing at 9, you play a round robin where you play, usually there's probably 14, 16 other teams. You play almost every one of those teams. And then
Mhm.
you go into a bracket play where you play best of 7. And then once that's over, you get like an hour for maybe lunch or something. And then you go into the next one.
So it's a little bit of a marathon day,
Yeah.
in terms of activity levels. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to consider that you want to supply yourself with energy. So,
Hmm.
but again, this is like quality over, uh, like, well, I guess quantity would be the other end of that, but um, just focus on quality is my point. And because that's, like, in terms of not having that crash as well that you're going to inevitably achieve when you eat too many simple carbohydrates. You don't want to have that bonk when you're competing then later again. But yeah, just try to stick with healthier options as much as you can, and whatever works best with you. And you kind of know, based on your energy levels and how you've messed with that throughout the week, throughout the month. It's a very individualized consideration. So nutrition for me is a bit like that. It's kind of annoying, but it depends. Like
Yeah.
it literally depends on the individual, and what they've already been eating before, and then how I can sort of tweak and alter that to make it more beneficial to them, and also so their body can shuttle the energy as efficiently as they can, and maintain that energy for a long bout like that. So I would really have to
Mhm.
kind of peer in to that person specifically and see what that looks like.
Yeah. And that's what the vast majority of the dodgeball community needs to focus on first, is outside of the actual day of the tournament and getting all of that squared away before that is really their big concern, where they're, actually training outside of gameplay. Like the tournament's not their only source of exercise for the month. So that getting that foundation set is really what they really need to focus on. I was just curious about carnivore.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's not beneficial for explosive sports. Like I
No.
don't see any benefit to that. Like I know there's people out there that are just religious about it because it changed their life, right? Because
Mhm.
they have all these other underlying issues that they've been fighting internally forever, and now all of a sudden, like they've been eating this way, and they feel like $1 million because
Mhm.
they don't have all this information, they don't have all these symptoms that sort of prevent them from performing at their best. So I get that, but for your average person, it, you know that or keto is probably a terrible idea for
Yeah.
competitive sport. I mean, you need carbohydrates, you need to supply yourself with energy, and you need to eat. So the thing is, you just don't want to overeat, and you don't want to do it to where it's going to have an adverse effect. So you have to understand what that balance looks like and supply yourself with energy when you can in between bouts, and be able to keep hydrated, which is another thing that's going to maintain your energy levels.
Mhm.
So those are really the basic things to consider for something like that.
Yeah, that was the one of the main reasons why um keto really appealed to me, was because my dad's side of the family, a lot are either diabetic or pre-diabetic.
Mhm.
So I wanted to try to really work on my insulin sensitivity. I wanted to focus on, fats and being able to kind of go back and forth, but I wanted to make sure that I could find that line of being fat adapted, being able to work on my insulin sensitivity, so that way when it did come to dodgeball season, I was able to feel that rush of energy, and I could
Mhm.
feel, when you're on keto for a while and you have a cup of rice, that first pump feels insane.
Oh yeah,
It's-
it's crazy.
yeah, so that was why the kind of some of those almost cultish diets kind of
Mhm.
appeal to me, just because I know I took a big interest in keto.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I get that too. And honestly, I think it's like to be able to go through that and like self experiment. I think that anybody should be able to understand their body on another level. And one
mhm,
way to do that is to sort of self experiment with some of those protocols that are out there. Plus, you get the benefits, some of the cognitive benefits if you're burning different fuel. Like you feel sharper. You feel like
yep,
a lot of effects like running off of ketones than you do glucose. So and I think like in terms of long-term health there's benefits there as well, but keep all those things in consideration, but also understand your lifestyle
mhm,
and what's going to make the most sense for you to maintain long term and sustain. Uh, and then you can get into the fun nuances of if I do this, then I'm going to get like this crazy surge of energy and I'm going to be,
uh-huh,
on my A game come Saturday or whatever. So, there's ways to do that. Like I said, you can sort of restrict carbs and kind of lead into the competition and then reintroduce them. And,
mhm,
basically what you're kind of talking about in terms of feeling that crazy pump or surge of energy. So,
yeah.
you can play with that, but honestly, unless you're like the most high level athlete on the earth, like those things are like, splitting hairs on splitting hairs. So,
Right. So being that we're a podcast that's just starting out, I kinda wanna touch back on when Mind Pump was starting up.
mm.
Was there what was your initial reaction to when, Mind Pump was pitched to you and whether you wanted to do it or not? How did you feel about, starting this to sit down and just shoot the shit with your friends about fitness and stuff?
I, you know what? Like, to me, we just started talking, and it was one of those weird things that just felt like there was that chemistry. It was like an immediate thing.
Mhm.
That it was easy because I mean I'm in a room full of like super talkers, so it was, it's great
Yeah.
for me. I like that because I don't really like to drive the conversation necessarily all the time, but I'm very interested. I was very interested with what was being discussed and problems and things that I saw, through my own experience as a personal trainer. And we all had very similar stories,
Mhm.
and we came to sort of the same conclusion. So I wasn't necessarily skeptical about that. I didn't really take it seriously for a while because we were thinking of that as just another way to sort of market ourselves in whatever respective business that we've already created. So it would be a great sort of a funnel or a way for us to potentially get new clients or to sell online books or
Mhm.
programs or things like that. Like that might be cool. But I'd never thought that that was going to be like the thing that was going to take over, me personal training and like all the other business ventures that I had going on at the time. So it was surprising, honestly. Like it really surprised me to see that the fun part of the business, like that we were actually like getting ourselves into, was going to be at the forefront. And so yeah, I don't know, man. It again too with talking a lot. It's something that I've had to over the years work at a lot.
Mhm.
It hasn't come naturally to me, but I've always loved challenges. I've loved to immerse myself in things that I felt like I wasn't the best at. Like I played multiple sports for that specific reason because I would start another sport at the very bottom
Mhm.
to really humble myself again and then try to work my way back up the ranks. And podcasting was no different to me because it was just something like I would get feedback and see kind of how to improve, and then I was very hard on myself to get better,
Yeah.
to take measures outside even to, of intervention to help me be able to perform better, even on the podcast. And I it was what, a year ago I actually signed up for this improv class,
Yeah.
and dude, it was a riot. It was fun, but also it terrified me. Yeah, like
Uh-huh.
it. I've had this sort of fear of public speaking my whole life because of like this incident that I had in fourth grade where I just totally bombed in front of like almost the whole school. I forgot and froze what I was going to even talk about. And so it's so funny. Like that childhood stuff just follows you and it just
Uh-huh.
carried with me forever. And I have had this like crazy imposter syndrome forever as a result of that. So I've had to really, over the years, just shed that and realize that I have a lot of experience. I've done this a lot with a lot of different types of people, and there's insight there that you're not going to get from books. And honestly, I always benefited more from watching and shadowing other trainers and how they were able to problem solve. And so, talking with other two brilliant trainers was easy because it's like, oh yeah, I tried this, and like, oh, I tried that, and we all were like, wow, that's a smart way to do it. And I feel like that helps the listener 10 million times more than just reading somebody's protocol that they had in a clinical setting.
Right.
These are real world people, and these are average people that need help and aren't bodybuilders that are on magazines and aren't high performing athletes. And that's great to talk about. There's lots of podcasts for those people, but it's not realistic, and it's not something that I would never tell somebody to do a program that a professional bodybuilder was doing. But a
Right.
lot of people do that. So we had to come in guns blazing and talk some shit. And then we just kind of ran with that, and people listened. So that's how it all kind of took off. And it's been a ride ever since that.
Was there a point where along those first few episodes or even a year in where you kind of felt a turning point where, okay, this is probably going to be our main focus. This is what we're going to put all of our energy into. And what was that turning point?
Yeah, there was I think we were all kind of like, so Sal still had his gym and clients, and I had at home clients. I had to kind of reduce a lot of my clientele down to just a few, and so I allowed some space to be a little bit more creative. Adam was I believe still in the marijuana business a bit, and was transitioning back to fitness, and so I reconnected with him. um but yeah, I think at one point we just realized that people were responding, and it took about a year to realize there was all this pent up demand for us to not just point out problems, but to also like provide an answer and a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, like Doug and Sal had already had maps anabolic sort of put together, and that was something that we all went through, and was definitely in line with everything we were talking about. And so we decided that that was going to be the first introduction to our audience of something that we would like them to try out and go through and see, if they could have a better experience training with this type of protocol. And so we just found that that was definitely something that our audience wanted from us. And we waited a while before it just became almost like they were begging us to just put something out there that we could put our stamp of approval on. And we built a lot of like credibility and authority just by trying to educate as much as possible and provide value. And then we just started following that up, and just the response and realizing that people were buying them. um it all kind of, the light bulbs all went up, like, oh, we could this could be the thing, like
Mm-hmm.
this could be our business. And this is something that we could do this like specifically solely, and leave our personal training careers aside, and really pour ourselves into this to make it even better. And so we all collectively kind of put our brains together and came up with all these other programs that dealt with different pursuits, fitness related, but just weren't being addressed in a smart way.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's really where we we found ourselves, and our voice was providing these answers to a lot of the problems that we saw out there.
So that's kind of, I mean, why we started as well. And there's, if you go back to our first couple episodes, we just, we're shooting the shit. We were talking about dodgeball. We were talking about working out because we were both trainers and both played dodgeball. And I like to say that we are like the the Tinder couple of podcast hosts because because we both were kind of thinking about what we were going to do, and that we had this background and we had this love of the sport, but we didn't know how to get it to everybody.
Mm.
And we I was brewing on this, and he actually put out a Facebook group page that was Dodgeball Fit to Win. And he just kind of made a community, and people were chatting with each other on what they were doing. People were posting the workouts they were doing. And as soon as he created that, he added me because he knew I was into fitness as well. And I said, well, let's do a podcast. And inspired a lot by you guys. I mean, I've listened to you guys for years now, and it's funny you talk about these stories like your improv class. And I remember episodes back there
Favorite
when
thing
you
to
were
talk
talking
about.
about them. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so I just slid into his DMs and was like, "Hey man, do you want to start a podcast? I have no idea how to do it, but I found this podcast on how to start a podcast, and I'm gonna listen to it all today. So if you're in, let me know."
Yeah.
And
Swipe left.
yeah, exactly. He kind of was like, well, I don't know," and then finally came around to the idea, and here we are a year later. I slid into your DMs, and
Yeah.
you shot me a message back, and
Totally professional though. You didn't add any emojis, eggplants, or nothing. So I
thanks,
appreciate
man.
it.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Well, I mean, I've done it a couple of times. There was when you have your little Q&As, I've
Uh-huh.
thrown a couple of questions in there just to see if you're answering. Like, I think one of them was um, about spike ball. If you and you and Adam, or if you were Doug, run a team against the other two, who would win? And you
Uh-huh.
answered it. So I was like, all right, I'm feeling confident. He answered this
Oh
one,
yeah.
and then you posted a question about what podcast should I be on next. And I thought, all right, here's my shot. I got to shoot it. And he
Yep.
came back.
Here we are, man.
Here we
Yeah.
are.
No,
Um,
it's awesome. I love that. I love that you got inspired. I think there needs to be more. There's just so much room for all these different niches and
mhm,
communities. And as again, this is a growing community that you're talking to now, which is rad. And if you can reach people, like it doesn't really matter what their interests are, but if you can reach them where they are, such a better, more effective way to do it than we've learned that because we've had to. It was an interesting process that we've been through because we've tried to kind of address the majority of people,
mhm,
but now we're realizing we really need to um, start like honing in on what each one of those sort of avatars look like. And
mhm,
there's just so much room to expand on these niches out there where people are really fervorous about like this really specific thing and this
mhm.
hobby that they're into, and they won't really look at other things outside of that. And so you have to be able to kind of have a door that opens to be able to even get that conversation going. So I love to see a lot of these different podcasts and different like YouTube channels and things bringing up people's interests where we can give them good quality information alongside that. So that's cool.
Yeah, and we're in the process right now of doing our first ebook or program, and it's actually inspired a lot by performance. We're going to do a couch to court type of
Yeah.
workout plan, so that way people that are just getting into it can kind of set that baseline and be able to control all their extremities and work on their proprioception and know where their body is. And um, we're in the process of that right now, so hopefully in the next few months, you'll be able to see that too.
Sick. Yeah. Yeah. You have to keep me updated on that. That's awesome.
What do you guys have anything big coming up with Mind Pump, or are you guys?
Um, like we just we're just trying to get more eyes and ears. I mean, that's our biggest goal, is to just grow. Um, and so there's, I mean, we started doing live events, and obviously that got derailed
Yeah.
from this year. So that was going to be like a new way to experience what the podcast provided. And we just like interaction with people face to face. I miss that. I miss
Yeah.
connecting with people, because it's, you connect more because it becomes real. And so it's not just us blathering on about whatever topics like somebody shoots at us. It's more personal that way. And like I think of people a lot of times that ask me very specific things when certain topics are brought up on the show. And so I do miss that hands-on kind of element too, even with personal training. I was very passionate personal trainer with my clients, and you lose a little bit of that, just sort of speaking to each other in this echo chamber all the time. So it's good to get feedback from people as well. But I mean, we've all both just been working a lot on individual things, and like Sal's going to be coming out with a book, early next year, which is really
Oh
exciting.
wow.
And he's been doing a lot of work with that, and we got that almost ready to, at least I think you can even pre-order it, but that's going to be coming out, I think, around March or so. And we've been working with a lot of new sponsors and trying to introduce those to the audience, and we've been very selective with the type of sponsors we're bringing on the show. And that's been growing. I mean, I've been doing some fun video stuff that I'll be releasing on our Instagram, and then eventually probably YouTube at some point. But doing commercials for our sponsors
So
in
saw
a
one of those.
weird, yeah, in a weird trippy way. But I've been having a lot of fun with that, and filmed quite a few of those already, and want to get better at that, and just to be able to highlight brands that we really like in a fun way, and to make it more entertaining. And we've also been putting a lot of effort into the real estate side of the business,
Mhm.
and so there's just different legs that we've all sort of been drawn to, and putting work and effort into. And so that's, I mean, we're never short of things to do, and of ways that we can reach people. Because again, like at the end of the day, we're trying to get in front of as many people as possible. And so that's really the goal, is to just kind of evangelize and spread the word of like what we've already tried really hard to make available and easily digestible for your average person to
Mhm.
understand better ways to approach their fitness and health, and benefit from that. And so that's honestly, dude, that's our passion.
That's awesome. So you guys aren't gonna join the mass exodus from California and go to Austin?
I mean, there's temptation there, don't get me wrong. uh it's pretty ridiculous how all this has been handled here in this state specifically. And I get frustrated a lot of times, and it's just you just feel sort of like you're yelling at a wall,
Yeah.
like there's just nothing you can do about it. And so I it would take a lot for me to move, because I mean, we're all kind of grounded here. As
Mhm.
much as we love the idea of it, I think that our family and our kids, and there's just a lot of moving parts to make that work. And it's not off the table, but it would take like another really annoying bunch of restrictions to stop us, I think, here. So yeah, we'll see what our Lord Newsom announces next. If it's something that I just, my head explodes, then I'll probably look at moving somewhere else.
Well, Gretchen Whitmer here is not much better, so I would not advise Michigan.
No. Michigan. Okay,
No,
I take it
as much
down.
as I love it here, I wouldn't advise it.
No, yeah, I've been looking. I mean, everybody's kind of going to Idaho and to Austin and Texas in general. Yeah, I miss freedom.
Yeah.
like I really like freedom, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like, being self-sufficient and thinking for myself, and being able to wear what I want, and like, approach my own health pursuits on my own, that kind of stuff. Like
Right.
little things,
Yeah.
just little things. So I miss those days. But again, like a lot of people in our situation, so
Yeah,
we're
there's
just dealing with it.
well, I think Joe's building a new studio, so there might be one opening up soon. Just slide into his DMs. You never know what might happen.
Easy. He's an easy guy to get a hold of. So
Yeah. Uh, Justin, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on to our small podcast and, talk dodgeball, fitness, nutrition, mind pump, everything under the sun.
hell yeah.
Means the world to me. And in one of our first couple episodes, this was a goal of mine to bring you and mind pump onto our podcast. So that's why we it was the inspiration behind starting it. There was the reason why we started to do it on Zoom was to prepare for this episode. 'Cause we booked it with Jerry like a month ago,
Yeah.
and I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for coming on. Um,
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I thank you for supporting us, and listening to us, and I'm so stoked you guys are inspired to do this. Keep doing it. You're gonna find that a lot of people will benefit from you guys being able to provide good information for them, and I guarantee that that whole community is gonna grow like gangbusters. I know a lot of people that'd be totally down for some dodgeball action. So, best of luck to you as well, my friend.
Thank you. If we have a tournament that's coming up that way, we'll definitely let you know. Nationals is supposed to be out west next year, so we'll keep you in the loop on that.
Hell yeah, man. You can pull me out of the stands and I'll smash some fools.
All right, sounds good. Thanks a lot,
All
Justin.
right. All right, brother.
See ya.
All right, cool, man.